All right, GM, it's time for the portfolio review. We're going to go around DFS, best ball, underdog contest, pick'ems, all of that stuff. Reviewing week 7, the good, JSN, breakout, Deontay Foreman shares back from the dead, in the bad, getting dusted on DraftKings. A tale as old as time. Let's do it.
I suffer from a debilitating condition known as atropic chokitis.
Peter's one of the greatest depositors I've ever seen.
Trust the process. Let's go. Let's go.
I got auto matched with Levitan. This is bullshit.
If I just go the other way in that 66, I win all the money. All the money.
If I had 150 lineups, I'd win too.
Process over results.
Illuminati make a bitch go crazy. I don't know which one of these my baby. Bust out AP, 35 bullets in your head like KD. Bust it, bitch go bust it. And I had 10 pints with me in Russia.
Hey everyone.
All right, GMs. Holy cow. My mentor, David Kitchen, becoming a YouTube member. I actually think David was already a YouTube member. His subscription must have lapsed there. But David, it always feels nice to have the man whose trunk I am grafted on supporting my YouTube channel. Matt had a cash to GPP lineup this week that he was frantically making in the parking lot of a trunk or treat. Congratulations. I know a couple guys in the Hand Builders channel, I think it was Gormanji, built one of his best lineups at a flag football game a few weeks ago. So you know what? I feel like the phone shitter bros, they get a bad rap because we're evolving. We're now making lineups at flag football games at something called a trunk or treat. Maybe this is the new meta. Forget the Sims. It's where are you building your lineups? Where are the Hand Builders, getting the inspiration to build total shippers? Graphic here already upset about Bijan. Yeah, really bizarre stuff. I actually just made a video about it for Fantasy Life, and I was reading the quotes from Arthur Smith about it. And it was one of those things where it was like Bijan, had a headache. He said he wasn't feeling too hot, but he was like ready to get out there. And Arthur Smith goes, no, we're good. Let's get you right. Let's get you right. I'll just give, Tyler Algier 21 carries and Cordell Patterson 10 carries, where I do think in a lot of those situations, the player's just like, nah, man, I want to play. I'll be out there. I'll fight through it. But of course, Arthur Smith, he's like, no way. I get a chance not to use my first round pick. I can use Cordell Patterson, the Joker, instead. Yeah, sign me up for that. So yeah, very frustrating day for Bijan drafters. Their 1 carry for 3 yards. GMs all around. J-Mike highlight from the weekend, Pete. Man, another very underwhelming weekend for me. Let's see. We had April swim lessons on Saturday morning. She's doing really well in there. She loves jumping off of the side of the pool. Now I put her up on the side and she gets really excited and kind of like scooches her butt to the edge and then jumps into the water. So I'm thinking she might be a little bit of a daredevil. That's the vibe I'm getting. That was a weekend highlight here. Joshua Tyquan Thornton got a catch yesterday to save our Best Ball Mania teams. I actually missed that. I did see that he was on the field watching, what was it, Demario Douglas have an incredible game. But yeah, the thesis of Tyquan Thornton is always week 17, right? That's how he won Pat Kerrane $2 million, is you just wait to deploy Tyquan Thornton on the unsuspecting masses in week 17. Let's do a little housekeeping here before we get rolling. I believe the ducks need to be fed, right? The ducks always need to be fed. All right, there's the ducks. Let's get the ducks fed here. All right, there's the ducks. And I think we need a fresh coffee pour here too. Get the sleeves rolled up here. It's starting to get a little chilly here in New England, guys. No more tank tops. No more tank tops. The guns are going away for the year. Now we're wearing light sweatshirts. I need to turn over my closet, get all my hoodies out here for this fall stretch. But let's get a solid coffee pour here to get us off on the right foot. I think that was a pretty solid pour. It was a close call. AJ was excited for this pour. I had the cup of coffee going a lot earlier this morning, and I realized I didn't have enough in the coffee pot for a hearty pour. In my mind, and what you guys have done to me is you have broken me so much that I'm like, all right, I know I have the show in 20 minutes, but I need to go and make a secondary batch of coffee, because if this pour is not hearty enough for the chat, I will get lambasted. And so I went up and made what I would call a content pot of coffee, some more just for you guys to make sure I can execute the pour on a high level, because like Nick, I was not executing my lineups at a high level yesterday. Let's dive into it. If you guys are new here on the channel, and the reason I say that is because a ton of people have been watching the Friday shows with JM. Those are getting way more views than they ever used to. So if you're new here, what we do on Monday mornings is we're reviewing our portfolio. We'll look at DFS lineups, my underdog contest. I got a lot of volume down again in the Battle Royale, in the Dog Bowl, and we'll celebrate another member from the Deposit Kingdom punching their ticket to Miami. We'll look at the Deposit Kingdom contest on DraftKings, and then also take a little lap around our best ball portfolio. Let's get cooking here. I mean, the macro story as far as yesterday, right, was if you didn't have an elite tight end on naturally National Tight End Day, you were getting dusted. It was a return to form for the tight ends. Travis Kelce, 38.9 points. Darren Waller, 22.8. Mark Andrews, 22.3. Even Dallas Goedert last night on Sunday Night Football, 18.7 points. So as you can see, too, from the quarterback scoring, Lamar and Mahomes there. So if you did the premium alpha stack, Lamar and Andrews, Mahomes, Kelce, you were printing yesterday. And I think I had asked Tuttle this on the Swolecast as well. I was like, are people getting fatigued with the alpha, premium stacks with the tight ends, right? Because everyone's down to pay down at tight end. We hadn't seen like a slate breaking performance from one of those elite tight ends yet. And people were just kind of like, I don't want to pay up for these guys anymore. And we finally saw the ceiling games from both Lamar and Mahomes. Mahomes doing it in the way you would expect. 4 TDs, even turned MVS into a top 12 wide receiver yesterday. That's how you know Mahomes is cooking. And then Lamar getting it done on the ground a bit as well. 9 rushing attempts, 36 yards and a touchdown. So I did not have Travis Kelce, Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, or Mark Andrews in my lineups yesterday. So I'm going to have fun staying poor. I will share my lineup. I think basically every single one of these plays I talked about on the cram. I was very into this Seattle Arizona game. I really wanted to pick on this Cardinals defense. I love the spot for Seattle at home. Seemed like the team was finding their form. Geno didn't look great against the Bengals, but he still threw for 300 yards. He had missed JSN for a touchdown. I thought this was a really good spot for them to get back on track. And then you coupled that with the DK Metcalf Q tag. And I was kind of leaning toward thinking DK Metcalf wasn't going to play. And so I, of course, was not going to miss this opportunity to get to play JSN, to get to play Tyler Lockett at this price tag without Metcalf. And then, of course, I did want to tack on Kenneth Walker and basically play that chalk through more of an onslaught and being like, yes, the field is going to play Kenneth Walker at a very high clip, but I am going to try to capture all of the points in a game where I thought the Seahawks could potentially score 35 points here. That did not happen. They scored 20 points. Geno Smith looked pretty bad, had the fumble, had the interception, only finishes with 15.76 points. That game was just absolutely maddening to watch. Their troubles in the red zone. They had the one time where they were just shut down at at the goal line and had to settle for a field goal. But let me read off the full team here for the audio listeners who I will always remember to service here. Geno Smith, 11.4%. This is in the big spy, the 100K spy. Kenneth Walker, 61.5%. Jonathan Taylor, 1.6%. Tyler Lockett, 22.5%. JSN, 17.1%. Amari Cooper, 14.6%. Trey McBride, my gold star lock of the week from the cram, 5.1%. Cooper Kupp, 35.5%. Chiefs defense, 14.9%. So I would say not too many shockers here for me. I know on the cram, one thing we do on the Sunday morning cram, which, by the way, if you guys are YouTube members, the Hand Builder and Opto Bros, you get access to both the DFS After Dark shows on Saturday night, as well as the Sunday morning GPP crams that we kick off at 10:45. And I had done a poll of which quarterbacks are you guys using? And it was overwhelmingly Jordan Love. a ton of Jordan Love. And I thought, man, maybe Geno isn't going to be as chalky. I think ETR small field ownership had him coming in around 15%. So that gave me a little bit more confidence to use Geno, not thinking that would get crazy. And then because the DK Metcalf stuff hadn't been finalized, I thought JSN would stay in check. I think ETR had him around 10 to 12%. And then I think this extra 5% naturally made sense for him to come up once DK Metcalf was ruled out. But this main block here, Geno 11.4, Kenneth Walker 61, Lockett at 22. I honestly thought Lockett was going to even be a little higher than that. JSN 17.1, and then McBride as my bring back at 5.1. I think this is about what I was expecting. I feel good about that. Jonathan Taylor was the lever I was most excited to pull as far as from a uniqueness standpoint. And I had talked about how I had so many guys going late yesterday that I was like, I want some early information. Ended up doing this Jonathan Taylor and Amari Coopy, Amari Cooper midi correlation here. The JT pick I felt very good about. I thought getting him at this cost, at this ownership was never going to happen again this season. That either his price was going to go way up or his ownership was going to go way up. But to get him at 6,500, 1.6%, felt really good about that play. And, I think there's scenarios where if Jahmyr Gibbs doesn't get there, maybe Deontay Foreman doesn't go nuclear, having the guy that's sub 5% that puts up 20 points could have been a very extremely valuable asset. Didn't play out that way for me, obviously, because my main onslaught didn't hit, but feel good about that one. Amari at 14.6. That was basically me acknowledging that I did really like this spot for the Browns. If you guys were running any optimals yesterday, you were seeing Deshaun Watson in all of these Browns. Like, we were reviewing the ownership and it's like Deshaun Watson, most popular quarterback by the algo backed, ownership projection. Jerome Ford, a top 2 owned running back. Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore popping in optimals. David Njoku popping in optimals. I did not want to touch Deshaun Watson for lots of reasons. I think him at chalk never makes sense to me. There's just too much risk. I never associate Deshaun Watson with anything resembling safety. And yet I did think I love picking on this Colts defense. We've seen them get shredded by a lot of people. So going to Amari Cooper here at what I thought would be moderate ownership and a little mini correlation with Taylor made sense to me. But man, Amari had a rough game, had a couple of drops, and then Deshaun Watson's in and out of the lineup. PJ Walker looks horrendous when he's out there. And they just it was a random game too, where there was lots of defensive scores, a lot of in and out there for the Browns. Cooper Kupp, I guess the last piece to discuss here. He was very popular, I think rightfully so. We didn't have a ton of really banging high-end options. Obviously, in hindsight, Travis Kelce was the high-end option you needed. But on this lineup where I was correlating my tight end bring back with my stack, didn't get to him. Cooper Kupp, 35.5%. I knew it was going to be a rough day for Cooper Kupp when I watched that first drive. I think he had 2 drops on that first drive because I am a film bro now watching my YouTube TV. But yeah, Puka ended up being the Rams wide receiver you needed, made some sick catches, and Cooper Kupp just looked kind of out of it. The Steelers pass rush was getting to Matthew Stafford, and they end up losing here 24-17. I did play the Chiefs defense, 15%, maybe a little higher than I would like, ideally for a defense. But because I wasn't playing Kelce, because I wasn't playing Pacheco, and this game had the highest total on the slate, I did want to think of ways I could leverage that ownership and say, hey, what if the Chiefs turn over Justin Herbert a few times? Maybe that's a way that I can crater some of that chalk and get some points. They finished with 10 points here, but pretty shitty lineup from a results standpoint here. I think the big lesson for me is that I struggled with was, should I have pivoted off of this lineup or some iteration of it based on what happened at 1 p.m. where Jonathan Taylor happy with that result, but Amari Cooper puts me behind the 8 ball. I was kind of paralyzed, and I ended up electing to let it ride because I had so much PMR, so much dependent on a single game. And this was kind of the dynamic I talked about in the cram, where I'm like, you want that information early. And I ultimately don't think I got enough information to totally redo my lineup. I wonder in hindsight if it would have been better to have played a defense early. Maybe I play the Patriots. In my other lineup where I had the extra 100, I got up to the Ravens defense, which gave you some extra information. But here I really only had those 2 guys going early, and it left me in a predicament on how to handle late swap. But yeah, ultimately, doing these onslaughts has been something I've wanted to do more, especially on a slate like this where there were not a lot of good totals, no totals over 50, multiple totals under 40, and thinking this is the kind of slate where if you just nail the one game that pops off, you can win all the money. That game ended up being Browns and Colts, but you would have had to have been very creative to get on that one, right? You basically would have need a Minshew like onslaught, right? With Jonathan Taylor, Josh Downs, and Pittman. And then you bring it back with Jerome Ford. I guess you could have punted it off with David Njoku, but that was like the game onslaught that would have really helped you outside of the alpha stacks with those elite quarterbacks and tight ends. We cry on Mondays. Catching up on the chat here. Yes, I used the word lambasted. Next year, National Tight End Week should be week 17. Yeah. Why can't they have it week 15, 16, and 17? A 3-week national holiday where our elite tight ends are able to separate from all of the other jabronis at the position. Robert ran a similar team just with Eckler and Bijan. Those guys came in very low owned. I think getting up to those running backs on a slate like this where ownership was condensing was a pretty smart way to play it. Yeah, what the hell? Nobody told McBride about National Tight End Day? He did have that sick hurdle though, guys. I mean, when I don't just gold star lock these dusty athletes. If I'm gold star locking someone, they do need to be able to hurdle a defender on a little catch and run there. OG1 JSN was mentioned by you and JM. I remember I slotted him in a couple of lineups that min cash. And yeah, and that was when JM and I slotted him in our lineup. That was with the assumption that DK Metcalf was going to play. And it was still seeing JSN's role grow. We had seen his ADOT increase every week, his snaps increase, and they came out of the bye and were playing a little bit less of the 2 tight end sets that had kept him off the field. So I thought at his price tag at 3,900, he was in play regardless. And I was kind of hoping DK Metcalf would just suit up and maybe be limited, maybe a little T. Higgins decoy type action. And then JSN could really cook. But then once DK Metcalf was out, I do think JSN was by far the best sub 4K play on the slate. But I got to give it to Bobo, man. Bobo's legit. Bobo was actually running ahead of JSN. And by that, it was basically like they just had Bobo play the DK Metcalf role and JSN was doing his JSN thing. So it's not even to take anything away from JSN. I refuse to take anything away from JSN. I need him to continue to crush. But man, Bobo's legit. Bobo can play a little bit. So the future is bright in Seattle if Geno Smith can ever put it together. I know I said Coopy. This is me doing too much baby voice these days. And now I slip up and say things like Amari Coopy. The Music Mike says, I've never seen a chalk piece so unanimously supported like Kupp. Makes so much no sense. Yeah, I mean, I don't even think 35% is that outrageous. I guess maybe you could say that because of his price tag at 9,500. But you just were triangulating every single thing you want in a DFS play, right? You love the matchup. The Steelers secondary has been beat a decent bit, even though they do get a pass rush. Cooper Kupp, his role and his volume projection is so good. And now they're using him a little bit deeper down the field as well, which opens up even bigger plays. So yeah, I think lock buttoning Cooper Kupp was completely fine on this slate. But yeah, it ended up you missed out on Travis Kelce because it was basically impossible to get Cooper Kupp and Travis Kelce into lineups together. So I'm not beating myself up too much about the Cooper Kupp play. I guess I am like tossing around in my head, should I have rejiggered this lineup and gotten Puka in there and gotten off Kenneth Walker? But I think that's one thing I struggle with when I'm working on my lineups on like Saturday nights and Sunday mornings with the Sims, and I'm like trying to grade stuff out and see how things are playing in specific contests, and then to make like wholesale pivots that completely alter the texture of the lineup in a way that probably makes what you simmed out completely useless. in benchmarking that lineup against the field and other lineups, I was just struggling with that. And yeah, I think it was a unique slate in that we just aren't going to have too many weeks where so many of the best plays and the interesting games are in the late slate. It's almost always the opposite, where we have more information early. And I personally find it a lot easier to make late swaps when I have 60, 70% of my lineup in the 1 p.m. games. And then it's really easy to know, like, what trajectory is my lineup on? Do I need to get more unique because I can't, beat all the chalk players that are already ahead of me in contests? So I found this to be a tough slate, at least for how I kind of approach late swap. And I decided, for this year too, don't fiddle with it. I'm not the late swap king like Davis Maddock when it comes to his cash game lineups there. So I decided to stay in my lane this week. Didn't work out. Let's look at a couple other variations on this lineup. So I basically played 3 different contest sizes. I've been doing the big spy. This has 5,555 entries. And then I also play the 250K spy, which is about half, 2,777 entries. And then playing a baby spy here with just 555 entries. And then doing the same thing that I have been doing, which is keeping an extremely tight core and then making some slight pivots. So on this version, in the slightly smaller spy, instead of Jonathan Taylor and Amari Cooper, I did both of the Packers players, Christian Watson and Aaron Jones. And then I was able to use that extra money to get up from Chiefs defense to Ravens. So it was basically just a 3v3. And instead of doing that mini correlation, which I thought gave me a higher ceiling in a bigger contest like the spy, just rolling out both Packers, thinking about them as a block of points, and knowing that Christian Watson and Aaron Jones were collectively going to be more popular than Jonathan Taylor and Amari Cooper. So Aaron Jones in this lineup comes in at 11.8%. And then Christian Watson comes in at 19.6%. All the other percentages here pretty similar to the bigger spy. And then the Ravens D, 11.7%. That was my preferred play over the Chiefs. They were 100 more, but I knew they were going to be less popular. They're less popular by about 5%. That ended up being a solid play there. They get to 14 points, and I kind of liked that negative correlation against Jahmyr Gibbs, who I wasn't playing. Of course, Jahmyr Gibbs hits, but as far as why I like them as a play, they're at home against a chalky running back. Obviously, Christian Watson blanks 5.7, similar to my Amari Cooper play. So I was just missing where, regardless of which wide receiver I was using in the mid 5s and low 6s there. And then Aaron Jones, 8.7 points. He clearly was not fully back. They were using a third running back in addition to AJ Dillon there. It was kind of a 3-way split. And the Denver defense isn't as much of a sieve as maybe we think. And I know Mathology actually just posted this in the Hand Builders Discord here. But, since that game against the Dolphins, where they gave up a historic amount of points, they've been fairly decent. The Chiefs struggled to move the ball on them on that Thursday night football game a couple weeks ago. And then, Jordan Love didn't necessarily have a banner day either. So we might have to adjust how we're thinking about picking on the Denver defense. And then my final lineup in the baby spy, so this was only 555 entries. I basically rolled out a full-blown onslaught. And so then the only tweak here on the other one is, instead of playing Christian Watson, I did Marquise Brown. So I ended up having 6 total guys from this game. And then I was able to get up to Bears defense in this lineup. Ended up leaving Aaron Jones. So this was the thought, hey, if this is the game that shoots out, I do not need to be perfect at every slot. Between Marquise Brown and Trey McBride, can I capture a good chunk of the Cardinals' points? Narrator, no, he couldn't. Marquise Brown here, like all of my mid 5s and low 6s plays yesterday at wide receiver, gave me the snowflake at 7.9. He was also very popular, 34.2%, which is why I didn't feel comfortable using him in the bigger and medium-sized spies. Wanted to use him in the smaller one. Bears defense ended up being a really nice play at 2,900. They were only 3.2% in this contest, and they get 17 points. But still, I am at the far away from the cash line here. My Geno Smith stuff just not hitting. Real quick, before we look at the Deposit Kingdom winner, I did want to just see the lineup here that shipped the big spy. Pretty logical lineup here. I really like this lineup from Bacon Bits. Did this get duped? Oh, it was like a near dupe, but it's the same amount of points, 207.86. A lot of similar players, but just the exact same amount of points. That's so weird, man. I would look, if I could win 75K playing the spy, it'd be the greatest moment of my life, other than when April Eleanor was born on December 8th. But outside of that, it would still be a glorious day. And yet I would be mega tilted if I chopped the spy. If I had to put an asterisk next to my winning of the spy as I was 1A in the spy along with Zach Nelson, that would just tilt me. Like my OCD would be tilted by that. But regardless, this was the winning lineup. A Patrick Mahomes double stack to Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce. You bring it back with Joshua Palmer. You play Kenneth Walker, the most popular play on the slate, and then you pay down for one of the other better values on the slate, D'Onta Foreman, who's going to be slightly less popular than Jerome Ford. Instead of playing Jerome Ford, you put in the Browns defense at 3,300. And then you play Jaxson Smith-Njigba, the best punt play wide receiver, and Drake London at 5,100, who only put up 11 points, but it didn't matter. This is one of those lineups that actually feels good to review because I'm like, I could have made this lineup. I look at this lineup and I don't see anything here that I don't envision myself getting on. Just a very logical double stack and a bring back, pull some uniqueness levers, but not a ton. Not a single player under 10%. I guess Patrick Mahomes at 9.9% here. But Patrick Mahomes, the lowest owned player. Otherwise, this is just all good plays. No hidden gems, just solid plays in a correlated lineup that wins $75,000. I should try that sometime. All right, let's look at the Deposit Kingdom League here. We did 400 entries. This did end up filling. It was 2 weeks ago. We had it at 450 and we were 2 entries short. We'll see if we can get it back up to 420 or 425 this week. But shout out to Smash Mouth Bucks, who took this down. Had a Patrick Mahomes double stack, but with Pacheco, no Rashee Rice, and did the Josh Palmer bring back. So that was how you won yesterday. A Mahomes double with either Pacheco, Rashee Rice, or MVS would have worked alongside Kelce. Joshua Palmer was an awesome bring back here. Also had D'Onta Foreman, Puka Nacua as the pivot off of Cooper Kupp, and Drake London, apparently a fixture of winning lineups in week 7. And then Michael Mayer going with the double tight end on National Tight Ends Day. I thought Mayer was a good play. His role was growing. I thought there was some input volatility as far as Devontae Adams isn't going to have a 5-target game like he did in week 6 every week. And there was a chance with the quarterback change that Michael Mayer's kind of breakout was going to be put on pause. We even heard the quote from Josh McDaniels after the game when he was asked why he wasn't playing AOC. And he said, it's not preseason anymore. My guess is Josh McDaniels associates Michael Mayer as a preseason type guy, but regardless, does not matter. Smash Mouth Bucks here goes double tight end, and then Ravens D shoves it down our throat, 202.16 points. I see GQ in here also with a really nice lineup, got the Lamar Jackson double stack. This was another super clean double stack. I mean, I love this. Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews. You bring it back with Amon-Ra St. Brown, and you have that running back pairing there again, Kenneth Walker, D'Onta Foreman, and JSN. So a lot of the winning lineups this week followed a very similar blueprint, double stack and a bring back with either the Chiefs or the Ravens. You play D'Onta Foreman, you play JSN, and you win. Easy game. Yeah, Robert says, I thought Palmer would be 20 plus in the spy. Yeah, I think that elevated price tag, like once you get over that 4,500 range, I do think there is like a mental block. At least I feel this when I'm building, where I'm like, man, I don't mind playing like a little chalkier, like sub 4K, or when we're punting it off at tight end, or if we're playing like a chalky Cooper Kupp, because it's like, I know what I'm paying for. But when you're in that like high 4s, low 5s, there's like a block in my head of, man, I don't want to play a chalky high 4 guy. I mean, it implies that there's a lot of risk with their targets and such, but Joshua Palmer at 4,800 and coming in a little lower, I'm guessing because a lot of players had that same mental block as me. Obviously a good play. I don't love him as much here as a one-off in this game, especially against your defense like GQ used it here. I think I preferred him in a correlated fashion as a bring back with Mahomes, but who am I to nitpick because GQ sitting here with a nice lineup. I see our guy Tom from across the pond here also had that similar double stack. I love this lineup from Tom because he did basically 2 game stacks here, right? And he didn't even force any bring back. So it's basically playing Lamar, Zay Flowers, and Andrews, and then playing Keenan, Josh Palmer, and Rashee Rice. So getting access to 2 games, Deontay Foreman correlated with the Bears defense, and then Jerome Ford as a one-off. So this is another one of those things where how many things did Tom have to get right in this lineup? He essentially had to get 3 things right. The Ravens roll, the Chargers Chiefs game is kind of a sneaky shootout, or not sneaky, but a shootout with the pass catchers, and then Deontay Foreman and Bears D correlation. Get 3 things right, you finish in 4th place for 186.88 points. Congratulations to Tom there. All right. Two Conman says, I stopped being so concerned about an opposing player in defense because on DK receivers can get there on volume. That doesn't hurt the defense. Yeah, for sure. It would never be something where if I loved a lineup in the salary fit and you're like, I don't want to go down to this defense and it just fits that way, I have no problem with it. I will say on a slate like yesterday, probably one of the best defensive slates we've seen as far as options at the defensive position. I would have maybe have tried to find a way to not do that necessarily going back to this lineup. But yeah, my guess, and can we see the salary here? If they had any money left over, Chiefs defense, I guess, yeah. Like, are you going to go down to Patriots against Bills? I guess you could, but yeah. And especially in a small field, right? Like this comes up all the time. We're talking about field sizes. This is a 400 person tournament. You don't have to worry about, slightly negative correlated boosts like that in the way I do think you have to worry about it in the Millie Maker. So that's a big distinction too, as far as how you're thinking about those macro correlations and how those correlate. When you need to hit the 99th percentile outcome for multiple slots, that gets harder to do in the Millie Maker. Speaking of Millie Maker, my best lineup yesterday, or I should say my highest scoring lineup, was the Millie team I built with Neil Orfield from Stochastic on DFS After Dark on Saturday night. I've enjoyed the exercise of building the Millie Maker lineup because it's not just, when we do the lineup on the Swolecast on Wednesday, 1, we're trying to get our bearings on the slate, but 2, we're trying to kind of get in the best plays. When Neil and I were building this lineup, we're trying to build a lineup that can actually win the Millie here. So we played Jonathan Taylor at 2.1%, Judy at 2.5%, Romeo Dobbs at 6.9%, Travis Kelce at 17.9%, getting off of the Cooper Kupp. This lineup obviously doesn't end up sniffing the Millie because the Jordan Love block with Dobbs and Aaron Jones doesn't hit. But from a Millie perspective, I do like the ownerships we're able to get here on some off the radar plays. By the way, if you guys, I mentioned it before, but if you guys want access to those shows I do on Saturday nights, really enjoy doing them. I had actually never done a show with Neil Orfield and got to know him, kind of his background doing content when he won the Millie Maker and kind of how he juggles all of his DFS play with also getting really into best ball as well. He's a pretty high volume best ball grinder. So if you guys are a YouTube member, go check out those shows. One nice thing about those, obviously like the crams that I do for YouTube members as well, those are not evergreen at all, right? The second the slate locks, we're just talking about plays, but the Saturday night shows are very evergreen. They're just interviews with people around the industry and some really good macro DFS strategy stuff. A couple weeks ago, Justin Freeman had a really interesting point about how he thinks about double stacks and bringbacks in specific types of contests. So some fun strategy and kind of outside of the realm of DFS talk on those shows if you'd like access to that. And yeah, let's head over to Underdog because I got in a decent amount of volume this week on Underdog. Got in 50 entries in the Battle Royale again. Got to get my Gladiator rake back there. I blasted off on the Dog Bowl because they had that promo again where any lineups that you had in the top 2,000, you'd get your money back there. And then I had one lone entry in the goal line stand. Did not have a big day yesterday on Underdog here, but first of all, on the Dog Bowl, we got to give a shout out to Sackreligious. Sackreligious is a Deposit Kingdom OG. He also hosts Stat Chasing for us on the Ship Chasing channel. That is a usage trend show that him and Drico do on Tuesday nights. And Sackreligious, legitimately one of the sharpest people I know, submitted to the Best Ball Data Bowl, and was actually on the stream this summer as well. I had him on Best Ball Breakfast. Extremely sharp dude, and not a surprise to see him littering the top of the leaderboard here in the Dog Bowl. He had 3 lineups in the top 10 here. He finished in 9th, 6th place, and 1st place. And I think there's a lot to kind of learn about what he did in this contest, but it's not surprising to see he had a very tight player pool with how he was approaching this contest. So his winning lineup: Lamar Jackson to Mark Andrews, Jahmyr Gibbs, Deontay Foreman, Chris Godwin, Cortland Sutton. You look at his 7th or 6th place team: Lamar Jackson to Mark Andrews, also has Deontay Foreman and Chris Godwin. His team in 9th place: Lamar Jackson to Mark Andrews. No Deontay Foreman on this one, but did have Cortland Sutton. So he had a very clear strategy in this Dog Bowl this week, which was to load up on Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, which was a fairly easy or gettable stack in the Dog Bowl this week as far as how ADPs lined up, and then also had a very tight construction around his player pool. And, you know, he had clearly had conviction in Deontay Foreman and in some of these wide receivers who projected for really good volume late. You look at kind of what he was doing at wide receiver, he was not taking on a lot of necessarily volatility. Like Chris Godwin and Cortland Sutton have been earning targets at a high rate there. And so I love how he approached this. There really isn't a lot of fancy stuff here. It's having conviction on this premium double stack that was arguably underpriced relative to its ceiling, and then just scooping up as much volume as he could. You know, Deontay Foreman, when you got to the later rounds of these Dog Bowl drafts, he projected for the most volume of basically any running back there. Even like the Rashad Whites and the Najee Harrises, who were readily available back there, I don't think their carry projection was as solid as Deontay Foreman. So shout out to Sackreligious, another Deposit Kingdom member heading to Miami. I said on Twitter, we're basically just going to have to establish a residency down there at this point. So that is awesome work there by Sackreligious. My best team here, I did have one of these Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews premium stacks, and Jonathan Taylor at running back. I thought I had a chance to maybe have a little fun in the afternoon slate. You know, this lineup actually felt close, right? Because Drake London had that touchdown or near touchdown where he hit the pylon, or like right before the pylon, and basically did a flip. That 6 points would have helped. Tutu had that touchdown that I think was supposed to be for Cooper Kupp that he caught. And then JSN had that good first half, but really tailed off. I was like, holy cow, if you give me that Drake London touchdown here, I'm going to do the thing where if just these 19 different things would have happened, I would have been going to Miami too. But I actually thought I had a fun sweat here for a second where I was, not maybe two big plays from Tutu and JSN away from crashing the party there. But yeah, I felt decent about my Dog Bowl portfolio. Had a team here with Baker to Godwin that had Kelsey in it, or this was a double stack with Mike Evans and Godwin, and even a little Najee here. I mentioned Najee as another one of those guys who had just a decent touch projection. And it was such a gross week at running back, specifically in the Dog Bowls in these 12-person drafts, where you really had to be hunting for volume late to make sure your lineup wasn't dead on arrival. Battle Royale this week here. Shout out to Free Money Team, who, similar to Sackreligious, was just completely crushing here at the top of the leaderboard. Had a team finished in 1st and a team finish in 4th. He, of course, had the Lamar Jackson to Travis Kelce. And this shows the differences in contest sizes, right? Where in the Dog Bowl, all you had to do was get that one thing right, essentially, the Lamar to Mark Andrews. In the Battle Royale, a much larger contest, you had to hit the nuts with Lamar Jackson and Travis Kelce. There does get the bring back on Lamar with Jahmyr Gibbs. You had to have Deontay Foreman yesterday. He puts up 31.5 points. And then Puka and Mike Evans here in the mid-range. And then looking at his other team, a similar Lamar Jackson, Travis Kelce, the exact same running back pairing, Jahmyr Gibbs, Deontay Foreman, and then this time Puka with Lockett instead of Puka with Mike Evans. So really interesting to see these sharp players roll out such similar lineups and mixing and matching. And it goes back to that larger conversation too about, being heavily condensed on a single slate. There's not a right or wrong answer to it. It's just your risk tolerance level. You're going to have more weeks where you completely brick, when the Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews premium stack doesn't hit, Sackreligious, licks his wounds and moves on to the next week. But when it does hit, you give yourself multiple shots at getting the correct pieces to bubble up around that hitting stack there. So I think that's definitely a takeaway for me this week of having a little bit more conviction on my core plays and not going through the motions as much as just like, oh, this guy's here, I'll take him. Because it can be very easy to fall into that complacency trap when you're doing drafts where you're like, oh, this guy's an ADP faller by 2 spots, I'll take him. But I do really appreciate the conviction that some of these drafters have had. And then it allows them to not just have a winning week, but a massive week, which is ultimately what you want. Because it's so hard to climb to the top of these leaderboards that when you are right, when you are directionally accurate on 1 or 2 big things, you really want to realize an outsized windfall for being right. And I've seen on Twitter, I don't know if it was Nez, who else it was, but some of our underdog drafting OGs saying like, these contests have gotten harder. They are legitimately harder than they were last year. There are more people playing. There are more people using tools. The field is sharper. And so thinking about how you are, approaching your portfolio on a given week, I do think is something, it's a tweak that I want to make. Because trust me, I'll click buttons with the best of them. I love drafting. It's very fun. But now that I'm putting in more volume, I want to be more intentional with how I am building out my portfolio. And it's a lot easier, I think, with Best Ball Mania to be intentional when you have like 4 months and you're constantly recalibrating how you feel about players, ADP shifts. When you just have this sprint of, drafting for 4 to 5 days, it's often harder to have a clear thesis on how you want to approach that slate, or at least it is for me. Maybe for other people who have more conviction and clarity in their thought process, that's not as hard, but it is hard for me. Partly because it's easy to get pulled in a lot of directions. Like, oh man, I went through a Commanders Giants phase of drafting last week where I was like, yeah, I want to load up on my Sam Howell stacks. I want to boost my Darren Waller and Saquon Barkley exposure. And then you go through that meta and then you're like, all right, now I get bored with that. Let me go over and get back to my JSN late round selections and stuff like that. And so I guess my takeaway is I want to be more intentional with how I'm building my portfolio and not just being that bag that is blowing in the wind as the week progresses. Or I could just put my nuts on the table. That too. That's basically a much more succinct way to say what I'm doing or what I want to do is I just want to put my nuts on the table. Troy here is down bad. I posted a 205.89 score, but I did not run that lineup in my 3 max or single entries. It's tough, man. It's tough. That's why this year I do have a little bit more peace of mind with my DFS play in that I'm playing an extremely tight core, essentially one lineup and some slight variations. And in that regard, I am approaching my like DraftKings portfolio how I would ideally like to approach my underdog portfolio, right? Where it's like, if that core game hits yesterday with the Geno Smith block, then I'm giving myself multiple chances to mix and match those other pieces around it. And then if that block hits, I have a chance at a really big day. If it flops, then I just brick out and we move on. And I want to apply some of that like tighter portfolio elements to my underdog play here. I think that's about it for the Dog Bowl and the Battle Royale. I did really like that $25 price point this week for the Dog Bowl, and I believe that it fully filled as well. So we'll see if they're rolling that out again this week. And if you guys are wanting to get more in the weeds like me with the Battle Royale and the underdog drafting, highly recommend one, obviously checking out the Badge Bros. They're doing great work, multiple shows a week. And then I've been syncing up with those guys on Fridays on the Underdog channel Often on the Clock. We do that Fridays immediately following my DFS strategy show with JM. So I do DFS strategy 2 to 3 with JM, then pop over to the Underdog channel with the Badge Bros, and we walk through all of the strategy for the Battle Royale slate. We draft some teams and we rip some pick'ems there. So make sure you guys are checking that out. And then on top of that, I have also been doing a Friday column for Fantasy Life called Hidden Gems, where I write up my favorite scroll the F down plays, essentially. Basically, any of the plays that aren't getting drafted in 100% of drafts. Had a pretty good week 7 from that regard. My Geno Smith was my quarterback. That didn't work out. James Cook was my running back. Pretty solid score for him. He had 17 points. Rashee Rice was my wide receiver. That one worked out as far as a late round gem. And then I whiffed on Michael Mayer. That one did not work out. But yeah, so if you guys want more of that underdog drafting content, you can check that out. Speaking of pick'ems, we should look at it, man. I had a rough day on pick'ems yesterday. The one we built, man, the one we built on the stream, was this it? Yes. So every Sunday during the cram, we build one. And, you know, we've had a nice streak because we had a cram show 5-leg entry that hit a couple weeks ago. Then off and on the clock last week, the one we built with the Badge Bros, that one hit, or maybe that was a couple weeks ago. And then ship chasing, our 5-leg and our core pick'em 3 hit. So I'm like, all right, feeling myself. Let's keep the good times rolling. We crowdsourced this one. Jonathan Taylor higher than 17.5 receiving yards, easy game. DJ Moore lower than 57.5 receiving yards, not an easy game. He was looking pretty good there, but he does come in under 54, so that one hits. Trey McBride higher than 21.5. He gets to 29 receiving yards. My gold star lock, nice. Then this would have been so mega tilting if we were heading into just needing Kenneth Walker to score a touchdown because he got stuffed at the goal line a couple times. So that one misses. But then the mega tilt here was this Geno Smith higher than 30.5 receiving yards. Someone in the chat had suggested tossing this one into the entry yesterday, and I really liked the call. I swear he had 23 or 24 yards on the opening drive and then just completely disappeared after that. So in a way, I'm pretty glad that Kenneth Walker didn't get in the box, because if we were one Geno Smith catch away from another 20xer, I would have been mega tilting there. But building these pick'ems has been very fun. I've been enjoying that. And if you guys want to join us on ship chasing, sweating those on Thursday nights, we share those on Twitter, and then we do a giveaway. Someone last week won $600 because we basically set up the giveaway that when we hit our core pick'em, we give away $100. If we don't hit, it rolls over. So we had, we were 0 for 5, 0 for 6 heading into last week. That unlocked a $600 giveaway. And that was fun. So this week it'll be $100 and it'll continue to build up if we don't hit right away. Let's see, I got a few more minutes here before I head off to SiriusXM so we can check in on the Best Ball Mania portfolio here. I am right around where I was last week, which is exactly at expectation for an average drafter with my advance rate right now. I'm advancing 25 teams, which is a little over 16%, which if you advanced at average expectation would be right around 16% there as well. So we're still hovering right around where we need to be. We only have one team in the top 1,000 right now. It is still that team that I pulled up a few times here. It's in 800th place, 821st place here. It is that team that has been decimated now at running back because Devon Achane and Jeff Wilson. I guess Jeff Wilson was back last night, but not doing much. And then Khalil Herbert and Roschon Johnson. So that block of players has really fallen off. But the nice thing about this team and having a 7 running back 0 RB build is a guy like Isaiah Pacheco steps up yesterday. He's been an anchor for this team. And then Jerome Ford, who had that big touchdown run at the start of the game, then ended up getting injured. I'm kind of worried about him. It looked like he had a pretty bad ankle sprain yesterday. So this team is still constructed in a way that I'm excited about it. But man, the hits keep coming to this running back room. It sits at 989 points. It has the Fields and Tua. Again, no Fields this week, but Tua and Tyreek Hill enough to keep things rolling. But man, it does show how quickly things change with these teams, where it's like 2 weeks ago, you're looking at Devon Achane and Khalil Herbert and Fields and DJ Moore. And then the next week, those guys are out. Tyler Bagent is in at quarterback. And we're back down to earth. But when you have these teams with a bunch of studs, you can see how they can carry you. So Mark Andrews, carrying us this week here. George Pickens starting to come on of late. So I still have high hopes for this team. If it can just weather some of these running back injuries, I still love how this team is constructed and kind of the single week upside that so many of these plays give you here. Donovan says, I might have the worst advance rate known to mankind. Yeah, it's tough. I've had multiple years like that. It was 2 years ago. Had a really bad advance rate across my teams. Part of it was, I think I was not as good of a drafter as I am now, but also because I had built a ton of 0 RB teams. I had drafted a ton of rookies. And I think, it is, I think, possible to evaluate your play right now and know, do I have a bad advance rate because I'm just stuck with some of these guys who have been injured, or did I make other mistakes? And I do think understanding like how you built your portfolio, like I'm extremely loaded up on these rookies. And so the fact that I'm at an average advance rate without guys like JSN fully breaking out yet, Marvin Mims, Quentin Johnston, guys that are looking pretty rough as far as from their early season expectation, I feel okay being at where I'm at, saying, hey, if these guys come on, they can supercharge some of these existing rosters. So depending on how you built, I don't think you should be too discouraged about your advance rate. And the cherry on top to that story is 2 years ago when I had a really bad advance rate, I had one team that finished in 10th place, the team I drafted with Eric Bime for, and it was an awesome team, obviously. And again, that's all it takes with all this stuff. It's one team. So as long as you are not questioning your ability to build good teams that have a chance to get through in Sun Run there, that are optimized, that's the other part of this, right? Like, it is possible I could draft a portfolio of teams that probably have a 25% or higher win rate if I wanted to optimize for regular season advancement, which is a different thing than fully optimizing your team to win weeks 15 and 17 and correlate those pieces to win in those single weeks. So if you weren't correlating week 17, if you weren't loading up on young rookie players and you still have a bad advance rate, then yeah, maybe it's time to look in the mirror. But depending on how you built, I think it is perfectly fine to be in a bit of a tortoise in the hare dynamic, where let all those other teams run out to fast starts because your goal was to build a juggernaut there. I did want to shout out, I do have my Neil Farley tool. We can look at the provocative violin plots, but I wanted to shout out my guy, Patrick Donovan here. He is in the ship chasing Discord. He built a really cool tool here. I'll post the chat in the link, BBMDB.com. I know Liam has been sharing some screenshots, but this is a really fun tool for looking at both individual portfolio stuff, as well as going through other roster combinations. So if you want to look something up, hang on, let me refresh here. If you want to look up like how many people have, Deontay Foreman and Mark Andrews, you can type in those two players here and it'll show you how many people have that combo, which is a pretty fun thing. So you can see, let me see here. And then you can narrow it down even further and be like, and also have Puka, and stuff like that, which is a pretty fun way to get a view on this. And then it'll show you them in the leaderboard as well. So want to shout out Patrick here. And yeah, we do have to also shout out Walrusballs, who is back now in the top here. Let me go to the regular season. Walrusballs was feeling left out. He had dropped down in the standings and came back. Where is Walrusballs? I thought he was top 7 last night when someone sent me that screenshot. He's still in 20th, guys. Walrusballs is still in 20th place here with a nice team, 1,058 points here. How's Edgarvey doing? Yeah, let's go look at that Edgarvey team. So that the team I was just reviewing, the Chicago-Miami, my best team right now, that was drafted on the same show as the Edgarvey show. And both of these teams that I drafted on that show are in first place. Edgarvey, though, he's in 5th. Edgarvey is in 5th place right now with the Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, CJ Stroud, Josh Jacobs, Dameon Pierce, Pacheco, Javonte Williams, Brian Robinson, Gus Edwards. Honestly, a running back room that could age gracefully there. Wide receivers, a little rough. Jamar Chase, DeAndre Hopkins, Zay Flowers, Odell Beckham, Wan'Dale Robinson, John Mechie. And then tight ends, Dalton Schultz, Tyler Higbee, Gerald Everett. But Edgarvey's hanging in there, guys. He might, in fact, land the plane on the Hudson there successfully. We shall see. This team, I had a Josh Allen team with finally Dalton Kincaid having a usable game yesterday. This is kind of a fun team. Josh Allen, Sam Howell, Ramondre, Kenneth Walker, Damian Harris, Eli Mitchell, Raheem Mostert. Wide receivers, Diggs, Keenan, Traylon Burks. Jesus, Traylon, get back. Jahan Dotson. Oof. Jahan Dotson looks rough out there. God. Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims, Khalil Shakur, Mecole Hardman. Signs of life for Mecole Hardman now back on the Chiefs. Tank Dell, David Njoku, and Dalton Kincaid. No, we will never call him that. It is Edgarvey, AJ. Edgarvey. Yeah, the tool is awesome. The amount of like tools bubbling up, and again, shouting out Neil, who made this portfolio graph for me as well. He told me, look, you guys did this to him. You made him change the violin plots. They are now box plots. And he had sent me, I didn't get to fully read it. He sent me a document kind of outlining how to use this. Let me read you what he wrote here. He said, chart 2, he goes, the violin plot is apparently too out there for the people to handle. So this will be removed for future versions. Not all filters apply to this chart, mainly the player name filter. So I just want you guys to say that your horniness around Neil Farley's Best Ball Chats caused him to change the display. Neil, I kind of know this audience. I'm going to guess they're going to want the violin plots back. Do you guys want the violin plots back, or is it too much? Does it get you too horny on Maine on a Monday morning to have the violin plots? Okay, this is what I thought. Quadzilla says this is bullshit, Neil. All right, we're going to have to talk. I think people need the violin plots back in their life, but he felt the feedback. He saw the video there from last week. And yeah, I mean, I knew Mathology was going to want it back. I do need to dig into his tutorial a little bit more, how to use it. This showing your percentage of entries. I like this one. I weirdly have not a ton of teams in 6th place. And 6th and 12th place are my lowest here. Have a bunch of teams in 4th place. But overall, my histogram of places is pretty spread out there. All right, people are pissed. Violins or we riot. All right, I'm going to touch base with Neil. We'll see if I can have him bring back the violin plots. I mean, Neil, you're doing a service. It's like both sex and statistical ed. Sex and statistical education. You're teaching us about violin plots and teaching us what these little red dots mean on the violin. All right, guys, I have to head over and do SiriusXM. Appreciate all of you. I know rough DFS day for a bunch of us, but we will get back on that saddle. Week 8, we'll get the games balanced out a little bit again, and we will climb back to the leaderboard. Appreciate all of you guys hanging out. Got the full set of regular shows this week. I do post links to all of those on Twitter, and you can come hang out in the Deposit Kingdom Discord. Become a YouTube member so you can unlock those extra couple of shows each week. And I will see you guys next time on the Portfolio Review. Peace.